The Chinese government under pressure. Pro-democracy protesters have shut down parts of Hong Kong, accusing Beijing of eroding democratic freedoms in the former British colony. So how will Chinese authorities handle this test of power? This is Inside Story. Hello there and a warm welcome to this programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Protesters in Hong Kong are vowing to continue their sit-in after what's been described as an unprecedented police response. The use of tear gas against demonstrators for the first time in years may have proven to be a counterproductive tactic by police. It shocked many and galvanised thousands more to join the protests. Their main demand is the right to vote and a free choice of candidates for the next election without interference from Beijing. Many in Hong Kong say they want to protect their rights from what they see as an increasingly assertive mainland China. Before we bring in our guests to discuss this further, here's Scott Heidler with more.
Tens of thousands of people now have gathered. Now, this started late in the afternoon. A lot of people started to flood in. And this is the main avenue that goes straight into the financial district, and that has really caused the financial district to shut down to some degree. Now, it's also right across from the main government complex and the main government building. That's that white building you see there. Now, crowds really started to swell in the afternoon, but that wasn't the case in the morning. It was a very slow start to the day. A lot of people spent the night after a very intense night, Sunday into Monday morning, and then they started to clean up. But then that's when we started to see a lot of these people arriving.
Quite angry because I didn't expect the government to do this to our people.
If the government can respond it at once, then we may stop it. But if they do not give any response, we just keep going on, and then maybe last for 1 week, 1 month, who knows.
And throughout the day, the numbers kept growing. As you can see behind me, that's the main road that goes into Central Financial District. It is just packed with people, and that goes on for about 250 meters. The same story going the other direction. Now, it's very interesting because as the day grew on, these numbers kept swelling and swelling and swelling, and part of that reason is because you see most of these people are wearing black. That's because on social media between Sunday and Monday, word got out that if you support this cause, obviously, yes, come out, but also wear black to show that there's a unified message. Now, around that same time that we started to see a lot more people coming is about the same time the government here of Hong Kong issued a statement telling the people to leave for security and safety reasons. Obviously, they're not listening because they came out in big numbers. So the question is now, what's going to happen on Monday night? Now that these numbers have come back, are we going to see a repeat of what happened on Sunday night, or is this going to remain peaceful and the police will stay at a distance?
So what happens next is the big question, and here to discuss that are our three guests today. In Hong Kong, we have Joseph Cheng, Professor of Political Science at the City University of Hong Kong. In London, Roderick Wai, Associate Fellow for the Asia Programme at Chatham House. And in Newcastle, Gordon Chung, Director of the Centre for Contemporary Chinese Studies at Durham University. Thank you all, gentlemen, very much for being here today. Joseph, I'd like to start with you by recapping some of the events that we've seen over the past 24 hours, because it's not all been peaceful on the streets there of Hong Kong. You yourself, I understand, were arrested. What happened?
Well, I was trying to bring some equipment to the protesting grounds, but the police stopped me and 3 other pro-democracy legislators. The police said we could not bring in sound equipment to an illegal gathering. It was illegal, and the police arrested us and confiscated our sound equipment. That was obviously a kind of political harassment. It has never happened. It had never happened before. And subsequently, the police tried to crack down on the protesters. A lot of tear gas had been fired. But this very afternoon, the government seemed to have realized that this hawkish stand, this suppression, had been counterproductive. And from this afternoon onwards, it seemed to have withdrawn the police from the protest scene and started to use negotiators to persuade the protesters to leave, but obviously the authorities have not succeeded.
What happened when you were arrested?
Nothing much happened. At that time, it was in the broad daylight. The expectation was that the police would not move in until pretty late into the evening. The expectation at that point was that the police probably would move in around about midnight, and hopefully to clear the protesters before 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning, so that Monday, today, would be a normal working day. This is the usual tactics, and this was our expectation. But because the police sealed the grounds, a lot of protesters came, they filled the streets, and there were thousands and thousands of people in various districts, so much so the police could not take any action except simply firing tear gas.
And this police reaction, this crackdown that we saw, has that galvanized more people to the streets than were there originally?
I tend to think so, because obviously these protesters were peaceful. They did not attack the police. They did not even throw things at the police. They did not disturb the shops nearby. And even the Bar Association today released a statement criticizing the police for using inappropriate violence, too much violence on the protesters.
Gordon, protests are pretty common in Hong Kong, but how surprised do you think people have been by the force of the police crackdown?
It's quite surprisingly, when you look at the image, you can see the students and also the protesters confronting with the riot police, and lots of, pepper spray and even tear gas were used in that occasion. So if you look at the image, you probably won't be able to expect, something that, could happen in Hong Kong.
Roderick, why do you think the police did respond so forcefully?
I think they felt, as one of the previous speakers said, that they needed to get this demonstration quickly under control so that normal business could return to Hong Kong as quickly as possible.
Do you think it was a mistake in that regard?
I think in hindsight, yes, it certainly was. That they probably should have tried a much more softly approach first, because what has happened is that they have just exacerbated the situation rather than, from their perspective, made it better.
Joseph, you said that the police reaction brought more people out onto the streets than perhaps would have come out initially. What is the main demand of the protesters there now?
To be blunt, the protesters understand very well that it is extremely difficult to change the decision of the Chinese authorities in the short term. But they would like to come out to show the world that we have not given up hope, we have not given up the cause for democracy. And moreover, there is a serious worry that we may not be able to uphold our values, our core values, our lifestyles, and our very dignity. There is a very serious concern that Hong Kong may be reduced to just another big city in China. So people have come out to show the Hong Kong spirit, so to speak, and people are also concerned that if we do not speak out, if we do not come out today, we may not even have a chance to do so a few years later.
Well, the promise of free elections, it goes back some 20 years. Now, until 1997, Hong Kong had spent 150 years under British colonial rule. When it was handed back to China, Beijing promised to let Hong Kong keep its autonomy. That deal became known as One Country, Two Systems. Beijing also promised to allow Hong Kong citizens the right to democratically elect their leader for the first time in 2017. But as the election date draws closer, China doesn't seem as committed to that promise. In August, the government announced the candidates for the vote would be handpicked by a pro-Beijing committee. Gordon Chung, give us just a bit of a background here, and an idea of just how pro-Beijing is Hong Kong's government.
After more than 15 years, when the changeover took place in 1997, you have seen lots of changes, but some changes were quite subtle. But in this case, the fact was that you've got a clear kind of outline of the universal suffrage to be worked out according to the basic law in 2017. The question now is more like how to implement this universal suffrage, and somehow that was not and clearly was not put in a good kind of communication discussion between the government, central government, and the general public of Hong Kong.
Roderick, was this aim for universal suffrage, do most people in Hong Kong believe that this should have happened by 2017? I
mean, the basic law didn't prescribe an exact roadmap for how to get from where they were in 1997 to universal suffrage, either for the Chief Executive or for the Legislative Council. And this is what is being argued about at the moment. I think, yes, it is clear from these demonstrations that the people of Hong Kong want a more sort of expansive interpretation of the wording of the Basic Law, because the Basic Law contains both a promise for election by universal suffrage and a reference to this controversial selection committee. The Chinese government's latest interpretation was highly restrictive and seemed to indicate that only people who were completely trusted by Beijing would be able to stand. And the people of Hong Kong, or many people in Hong Kong, felt that this was in effect undermining the reality of universal suffrage, because if you couldn't choose who you were voting for, the mere act of voting didn't really make much difference.
Sure. Joseph, we've got Hong Kong is a very divided society, and let's not forget the other side of the argument. You've got many people there who say that Beijing's proposals for 2017 are an actual improvement on the current system, and they're happy to go along with Beijing's timetable. Do you feel that that is quite a significant voice on the island?
Well, you are right in the sense that while it is clear that a majority of Hong Kong people, usually up to 70%, as reflected by public opinion surveys, want democracy. Nonetheless, a segment of the population does not want to confront Beijing, and they understand that Beijing will not allow Hong Kong democracy. They accept the status quo. It is true that you have a segment of the population adopting a kind of accommodating attitude. And of course, the business elites are firmly behind Beijing. They think that Beijing respects the interests of the investors, and they are happy with the status quo. But increasingly, the young people and the better educated people think that it is not fair. They see that they should have their basic rights, and it was already promised by Beijing, and they feel cheated. Moreover, people are increasingly unhappy with the widening of the gap between the rich and poor, the increasing collusion between the government and the big business groups, and the worsening of the corruption situation. In short, people understand that while democracy is not a panacea, they see democracy as an essential element to tackle all our deep-seated social and economic problems.
Okay, and I mean, Gordon, we're hearing all these people, these other side of the voices, as Joseph was just saying, but we're not really seeing them coming out onto the streets. We know they exist. We know there are pro-Beijing movements because we have seen them in the past. Where are they now?
They're everywhere, but seemingly here you can see the back there some advices to the Hong Kong government. And you've got a number of think tanks nowadays providing different sorts of opinions, if not policy-oriented ideas. So you can see this kind of increasing and emerging kind of ideas coming out, from different sources.
Roderick, why there in London? I mean, Beijing is saying that these protests are the work of foreign countries getting involved. I mean, that's a pretty tried and tested line that we see around the world. Do you think people actually buy it?
It depends where you are sitting as to whether or not you buy that. Certainly in Beijing's ruling circles, perhaps, there has always been a suspicion that Hong Kong would be used, as they see it, as a base for subversion against them, a base for subversion by foreign forces. So they have a real sensitivity to that. Outside those circles, I think there is not much credence given to the idea that these particular demonstrations were inspired and motivated by outside forces. They are about Hong Kong and Hong Kong's relationship with China.
There's a lot of rumours, isn't there, Joseph, that the army is going to step in. I mean, let's not forget that the People's Liberation Army does indeed have a garrison in Hong Kong. Is there much fear on the streets that we're going to see scenes reminiscent of Tiananmen Square back in 1989?
I don't think so. I think Hong Kong people understand the danger, the threat, and they are exercising tremendous restraint. As you can see, the protesters are very peaceful. They never go and attack the police. And the organizers of the protest, the pro-democracy leaders, when things seem to go out of control a little bit, even then, they appeal to the people to go home. People understand that ultimately Beijing will intervene if the situation is too bad.
Do you then get the feeling that the protesters are in for the long haul, that they're settling down in that business area?
Not with regard to this single campaign, but the protesters would like to demonstrate, and they are ready to engage in various types of peaceful, non-violent political struggles and civil disobedience campaigns in the long term. So they will do one thing, then they go back home, they will try something else. Basically, they do not trust the government. In their eyes, the government has no legitimacy, and they are trying to expose this fact that the government does not enjoy the support of the people, it has no legitimacy, and it will find it extremely difficult to implement effective governance.
Roderick, Hong Kong is a global business hub, as we all know, and these protests are taking over the business area, central area. If Hong Kong businesses start suffering and the economy starts to be affected, do you think we're going to see people turning on the protesters instead of turning to the protesters?
That's always a possibility. I mean, as previous speakers have said, one thing that many Hong Kong people do not want to do is have a direct confrontation with Beijing over this. And they don't want to push Beijing too far, but at the same time they want to make their point very clearly and very seriously. We are in the early stages of this this process. We don't know how it's going to work out, and I think it will be some time before it has a serious effect on Hong Kong's economic prosperity. But this is one of the things that both the government and the business community will be quick to point out if it begins to show some effect.
OK, so Gordon, do you think that Beijing can wait it out and let events take its course naturally, or do you think it's very difficult for Beijing to sit on its hands and not intervene?
Depending very much on the situation, coming out in the 2 or 3 days after this clash. And at the moment, the Chinese government is keeping a close eye on the situation. But once it hasn't been kind of escalated to the crisis point, I don't think the Chinese government is putting a blockade over the universal suffrage.
Joseph, National Day is on Wednesday, a big celebratory holiday there across the Chinese mainland. What chance, what feeling are you getting there that there's an appetite for this protest to spread to the mainland?
Not yet. In the first place, the protesters would like to survive today and tomorrow. And then Wednesday and Thursday, as you said, they are holidays, public holidays, because of the National Day on October the 1st. Then because of the holidays, people expect more protesters to come out since they don't have to go to work and so on. I think Beijing is certainly concerned with the potential demonstration effect of this kind of protest, that Hong Kong people can organize peaceful protests. Previously they had organized informal referendums and so on. So there is, of course, a tremendous concern about this demonstration effect, especially the student movement in Taiwan and even in Macau.
And Roderick, how likely is it that Xi Jinping will listen to this? I mean, he's obviously aware of the protest and he's very concerned about it, but any chance at all that he's hearing the demands and he's in the frame of mind to perhaps negotiate and listen to the demands?
I think there is very little chance of the Chinese government altering its formal stance. It has spoken in a formal way through the decision of the National People's Congress. It is in a wider sense in no mood to be pushed around or to negotiate with forces that it disapproves of. So I don't think there's going to be any major concessions from the Chinese government. But there is still room for negotiation around the details of exactly how all this turns out. And there is still a lot of political water to flow under the bridge in Hong Kong before we see exactly how all this crisis is going to work out. And the major players will be Beijing, the Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong people in this.
Gordon, what sort of negotiations do you see happening?
Now it's back to the government. The one thing behind this fiasco, if you like, is that there was not enough communication between the government and the general public, because the central government has already been kind of given a kind of ideas of the universal suffrage, and it is all the way due to the fact that whether the leadership in Hong Kong, the political leader and also the government to deliver the sort of message to the general public. I think this is the key point in the future few days of negotiation.
Joseph, if we look slightly further forward, do you see Hong Kong getting more or less autonomy from Beijing?
Probably a bit less. I agree with Roderick that Beijing is very unlikely to make any serious concessions. And because it is concerned with political stability in Hong Kong, it will crack down more, it will spend more money to strengthen the United Front. The Hong Kong government in this regard is not much of a player, in the sense that the C.Y. Leung administration has to toe the Beijing line very closely on the issue of political reforms. So it is very much a test of the political will of the people. Will they continue protesting, denying the government legitimacy, denying the government any chance of implementing effective governance?
Indeed, very interesting to follow the days and weeks ahead. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us here today. Joseph Cheng, Roderick Wai and Gordon Chung. And thank you too very much for watching. Do feel free to add your voice to this discussion. You can leave your comments on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. We're also on Twitter. Look out for @AJ Inside Story. I'm Laura Kyle. From me and the whole team here, bye for now.